Good day, everyone, and welcome to The Shift. I'm your host, Doug McKenty. I'm joined today by Caleen. She is the chief and spiritual leader of the Winnemem Wintu people. We're right here in beautiful Mount Shasta territory, Mount Shasta Trinity National Park on the banks of the McLeod River. This is the traditional lands for the Winnemem Wintu people. And Caleen, how are you doing today?
Pretty good today. It's a nice day.
Hanging in there?
Yeah, hanging in there.
Well, I was hoping to get started today that you might tell us the creation story for the Winnemem Wintu people and just describe your relationship with Mount Shasta and the land and the salmon especially. Could you do that for us?
Well, I will. How much time do you have? I mean, it's a very, very long story, but
Short and sweet.
okay. The short version is that all of the spirit beings lived inside of Mount Shasta, and the Creator made the outside world and wanted those to come out and take care of it. And so from the spring of Mount Shasta, all the spirit beings took form and came out that water and bubbles and came down the watershed and populated to take care of everything, the acorn trees, the salmon, everything you think of. And then the last little being was the human. And the human went out and named themselves, and the Creator thought to himself, boy, that one's going to need some help. And so he called back the fire spirit and the water spirit. And the salmon came back and said, I'm going to offer my voice so that they can speak and communicate, so that they can get along. And so that's how our connection to salmon is that we got their voice in us promising that we'll always speak up for them. So that's our connection to trying to get the salmon back to their home waters.
All right. Well, we've just been witnessing a 4-day ceremony, a 4-day war dance going on here on the traditional grounds. And I just want to start by giving people who are watching this some perspective. How many Winnemem Wintu were there, say, 200 years ago that lived right here in this valley?
On this river, there'd be over 14,000 Winnemem people living here with, a number of villages up and down the river.
Yeah, I mean, as I've been here the last couple of days, it's really struck me just imagining in my mind what it was like to see, villages and people and canoes running up and down here, and just what a thriving community it must have been. So can you tell people who are watching this how many people are practicing the Winnemem Wintu way today?
Today we have about 125 Winnemem people who still believe in the sacred places, who still sing the sacred songs, and follow these ways, pick our medicine, do our traditional way of life.
So that gives people, I think, a scope of what's been going on here for the last 150, 200 years in terms of the indigenous way around this part of California. So let's shift our perspective then. Well, you did a war dance this weekend, and we'll get to that in a bit, but you also did a war dance in 2004, and that was on top of the Shasta Dam.
Yeah.
So will you describe for us what happened to the Winnemem Wintu traditional lands when the dam was built, how that happened? Just, actually kind of give us a historical overview of what's been going on, maybe over the last 100 years and when they built the dam and what happened at that point.
Yeah. Well, they discovered gold in California, and, the 49ers. In 1850, they made California a state, dealing with the Mexican government and dividing up the lines and all of that kind of stuff. But they also then installed an extermination policy against the California Indians. This is part of the population reduction, that miners, if you couldn't find gold, you could make a living killing Indians. And then by 1910, the estimate of Winnemems on this river was 395. And then the boarding schools and all that sort of stuff kicked in. Prior to that, 1879, they started the U.S. fish hatchery on our river because this river was one of the biggest salmon producing rivers in California. So they established that fish hatchery here, which the Winnemums also did a war dance against the treatment of the salmon at that time. But of course, it was during the time when Indians could just be killed, outright. So.
And that was the last war dance until the 2004 war dance, right? So that's over 100 years, 125 years without war dance ceremony and other ceremonies too, probably. Well, why don't you talk about the ceremonies in general, and how long was that able to sustain itself, and then it seems like there was a lull for a while before just recently.
Not necessarily.
Well, fair enough.
Not a lull, because our tribe has always been active in writing to the president, trying to get justice for the Indian people of California. In 1889, our chief wrote to President Benjamin Harris about the homeless condition that this state has left the Indians in. And they sent out commissioners to study the issue, and that's when he said, well, we want land. We want to be here on our river. We don't want no reservation anywhere else. Because then they were installing homeless Indian land and reservation systems for California. And then following that, 1924 is when Indians got the right to vote. They were citizens of this country after 1924. So 1928, our people again took lead on filing a lawsuit against the state of California for the promised reservation lands that never came about, and the lost lands that everybody took, including, this river. And then, of course, in 1941 is an act of Congress to install this dam and take our land. And after that, they flooded it, knocking down all our home sites. And they're supposed to give us land to live on, supposed to give us an infrastructure, and move our cemeteries. Well, they moved some of the cemeteries, but they were supposed to hold it in trust for the tribe or the family name, which they did not do. And so now they transferred it to the BLM, and they don't allow burials. And so it's basically, we came out with nothing on the act of Congress. Now that's a law, right? So if you don't fulfill a law, what happens? Maybe this land is still ours. Since they breached that law, they didn't follow through with any part that benefited, the people that they took the land from.
So let's talk about what happened right here in this space. This was the village of Kaibay, and most of it now is underwater. I mean, you're really, we're looking at, and then the Winnemem Wintu, how long were they able to stay on this stretch of property? When did they get forced out? Was that before the dam was built, or after it was flooded they had to go?
After it was flooded, because Bill Curl, who is my great-grandpa, this was his land. He planted the trees here. He planted the fig tree, the cherry trees, all of them, that he lived here. This is where my grandma grew up, And then when they did the dam, he passed away in 1937. And then his wife passed away in 1938. And then, of course, all of this was taken by the Forest Service 300 yards from the lake line up clear around the lake. And so somehow this became Forest Service land without, buying it from the family or buying it or exchanging or compensation. But somehow they just absorbed it. No one knows how. I mean, even when we asked the Forest Service, show us your paperwork, how you got this place right here, the Kaibay village, when there were still people who lived here. But they moved everybody out.
And you got nothing in return.
Nothing. Yeah, Winnemums own nothing on this river. But we continue to come here. Our sacred places are here. They might have made us leave the river, but they didn't take the river from us.